Tonight, Alberta police are looking for other victims after arresting and charging a man with child luring following an incident in Saskatchewan.
Good afternoon, Salot in Edlanot.
Also, how one man is turning to technology to share stories in Dene this Indigenous Storytelling Month. Plus, it's Bike Week in Saskatoon, and it's more than just a chance to break out the wheels.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Thursday, February 22nd, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. I'm Ethan Williams in for Sam McKeag. Thanks for joining us tonight. Police in Alberta have arrested and charged a man with child luring concerning a young person from Saskatchewan. And now they worry there are other victims out there, potentially in either province. Sam Sampson has more on this case and a warning some details may be hard to hear.
The Alberta Law Enforcement Response Team arrested 28-year-old Abraham Wu in Edmonton earlier this month. But officers worry more young people may be impacted in northern Alberta and Saskatchewan in other communities he worked closely with. Wu has been charged with child luring, as well as making, possessing, and distributing child pornography. He's expected in court later this month. They say the charges are related to Wu's alleged relationship with a child he met while working in his own community of Pasqua First Nation in southern Saskatchewan. Wu worked at the School and Youth Centre in 2014 or 2015, and then again in 2021. Police say Wu kept in contact with the child after he left and recently lured them over Snapchat and Facebook. The offenses were first reported to police in Saskatchewan in January.
It was a shock because when you meet the person, very energetic, very committed to working with our youth. If anyone comes forward, we would have support mechanisms for them. Police
say Wu has worked in 4 Alberta facilities, all possibly dealing directly with children. Based on the amount and nature of the material police say they recovered from Wu's electronics, they worry there could be more victims, especially since some of the material is new to investigators, like these censored images. Police say when they see new material, they worry it's been created by the suspect, which means there may have been contact with the child in the image.
The assistance that's being requested is because I don't know what every locker room looks like in Saskatchewan, Alberta, or elsewhere, is to try and seek the public's attention to where that might be, also with a view of potentially locating a child victim.
Morrison says his team is seeing an increase in the number of incidents of online luring leading to in-person abuse. So as hard as it might be, he encourages parents and guardians to talk with their children about personal safety to try to get ahead of criminal activity. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Regina.
We're learning more tonight about the death of a 12-year-old boy in Saskatoon earlier this week. It's the city's latest homicide. Dane Patterson now with the latest.
2 boys, aged 12 and 13, have been charged with manslaughter in Saskatoon's 5th homicide this year. Police say that the 12-year-old victim knew the 2 boys accused of shooting and killing him. Police responded to a call in Saskatoon's northwest at about 3 in the morning on Monday. It happened here on the 1000 block of Matheson Drive. Police say the boy was seriously hurt and taken to hospital where he later died. A neighbor told CBC she heard what sounded like people running around the house and got up to look out the window, where she saw a boy being pulled out on a stretcher by paramedics. An adult was also arrested at the time, but police have only announced charges against the 2 boys. Along with manslaughter, the boys are facing 4 gun charges each, including careless handling of a firearm and pointing a firearm. Their identities are protected by the Youth Criminal Justice Act. One of the boys appeared in provincial court Thursday morning. Both will appear in court next week for bail hearings. Dane Patterson, CBC News, Saskatoon.
And as Dane mentioned, this is the 5th homicide in Saskatoon so far this year. There were 12 in all of 2023. And the Saskatoon Police Service's crime map shows nearly 350 reports of assault since January 1st. The service's Deputy Chief of Operations says it can be hard to determine what circumstances lead to violence like this.
Individuals who are engaged in either a high-risk lifestyle or who are struggling with significant mental health issues or who are living within a volatile relationship circumstance are at higher risk. But there's never a way to predict completely who might be our next victim of a homicide.
And while we don't know how many of these incidents are gang-related, McBride says it's inaccurate to call the violence a, quote, gang war. Still, others say gang-related violence in the city is on the rise. For more on this, we're joined by Don Meikle. He's the executive director of Saskatoon's EGAD's Youth Centre and has worked with young people in the city for decades. Don, thank you for taking time for us today.
No problem. Thanks for the invite.
So what role do gangs and drugs play in the violent start to this year?
They both kind of go hand in hand, but if you've noticed, like we notice a lot more of younger kids getting involved in gangs, and they fragment off and then they start their own gang. And it's usually, you know, a lot of violence. It's just a lot of where, I guess, how they've been brought up for a lot of them, how they grew up, the trauma. It's just where really hurting somebody or killing somebody is not a big deal anymore, which makes it really scary. And then you have our drug situation, which has been growing exponentially in the wrong way.
What else do you think needs to be done to lower the violence in the city, but maybe draw City Council or police's attention to what needs to change?
Well, I think we need to get back to some common sense kind of thinking, and you know, we used to have a lot more programs that focused on healthy living and focused on recreation. You know, my doctor told me years ago, if you have a kid involved in sports or hockey or some kind of sports, you're probably going to not have a kid that's in trouble with the law. We've gone from a harm reduction kind of thing to taking away what kids really need. We have to start working with these young people, teaching them about life and about and showing them, instilling them that there's a hope for a better future. It's not all about staying and trying to get what you can for free. Like we shied away from teaching kids how to do some work and earn that money, because if they're earning that money, they're not out stealing yours. You know, it's I know it sounds a little right-leaning for me, but we've gone so far the other way that we need to get back to some sense of balance here, and there's no balance anymore. It's, you know, somebody can do a serious crime, and it's like, well, what are we focused on? Are we focused on the crime? Are we focusing on how it affects victims, how it affects their community? Or are we focusing on, well, they just shouldn't be in jail? There is bad kids and there is bad people, and we need to really start looking at what are we doing with the bad people.
Don, thanks so much for your thoughts on this.
No problem. Thank you.
Don Meikle is the executive director of Saskatoon's EGAD's Youth Centre. Nathaniel Veltman has been sentenced to life in prison for killing 4 members of a Muslim family in London, Ontario. The judge also labeled the 23-year-old man a terrorist. Relatives of the Afzal family are calling on Canadians to learn from this tragedy and take steps to combat hate.
Closure is not possible. What is possible is to channel June 6th into positive change.
Veltman was also given a concurrent life sentence for the attempted murder of a boy who survived the attack. Veltman has no chance of parole for 25 years. He was convicted last fall on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. In June 2021, he drove a pickup truck into his victims while they were out for an evening walk. The Saskatchewan NDP says the provincial government is not being transparent about its finances. It comes after the government quietly authorized more than $750 million in spending earlier this week. No ministers were publicly announced the funding, and the only indication it happened is through a series of documents posted online. The NDP's finance critic says there may be an innocent explanation for why spending $750 million was necessary, but he hasn't heard it yet.
So it's about fighting for best value for Saskatchewan people and about transparency. At the end of the day, Taxpayers deserve nothing less than honesty, transparency, value for money, and good management. They're not getting any of that right now.
In a statement, the province defended the decision to spend the money. The government says it's necessary to top up ministries' budgets until the end of the fiscal year. It did not explain why 13 different ministries need the funding. Witherspoon says the province needs to provide a financial statement so the public can understand what is going on. A director of some of the biggest blockbusters of all time has been appointed a Companion of the Order of Canada. Ontario-born filmmaker James Cameron attended the special ceremony at Rideau Hall today. And as Aishwarya Duda will tell us, he has a prairie connection too.
We've all heard of Titanic, Avatar, or The Terminator, famous works by the director James Cameron. He's just received one of the highest honors of the country, being appointed to the Order of Canada. But did you know he has a connection to Saskatchewan?
We have a couple of businesses in Saskatchewan, so I mostly get back to Canada to work on that stuff. We grow yellow peas and fava beans and lentils, and we do plant-based protein. We built a factory there for plant-based protein.
Cameron isn't the only celebrity with ties to the province that's easy to draw but hard to spell. Emmy and Golden Globe winner Stephen Yeun actually went to school in Regina when he first came to Canada.
We moved to Regina, Saskatchewan.
Wow, that is crazy.
What are you doing here? You should be manning the tills over there or something. It's so cold over there.
But some celebs are not so keen to be linked to Saskatchewan, like Joni Mitchell.
She was actually born in Fort Macleod, Alberta, and moved around to Maidstone, North Battleford, places like that, and then ended up in Saskatoon, went to Aidan Bowman Collegiate in Saskatoon, spent a few years, formative years here.
Some claim billionaire Elon Musk spent some time in Saskatchewan when he was younger. But why do we care so much about famous people and their links to this province?
I think it's just that idea that, like, maybe that brush with fame means something and just makes us matter a little bit more and gives us a bit of pride in the sense that, this person that everybody in the world knows spent some time here.
So next time you see Tatiana Maslany in a TV show or a movie, or cheer for Brock Lesnar in the ring, or sing along with Tesher on stage, you can say they've spent some time in the Queen City too. Aishwarya Duda, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Well, the fog has lifted, the sun has come out, and of course the temperatures have warmed up in Regina today. And the snow, as a result, is melting again. Now, are we in for more of this balmy winter weather? Tyreek Reed has the details in his forecast when we come back. Welcome back. Above seasonal temperatures have made Bike Week even more fun for cyclists in Saskatoon. Cyclists can take part in scavenger hunts, upload selfies for prizes, or grab free drinks on their way to work, yes, even in winter. Avid cyclists say all you need is the right gear and a positive attitude to see the beautiful sights your city has to offer.
Man, it's kind of like, it's cheesy, but it's the wind in your hair, just the connection of the human body with one of the world's most efficient forms of transportation just working together. And it's quick and it's easy. You hop on your bike and off you go. There's no thinking required.
With fat bikes and studded tires and just better gear these days, like jackets and mitts, there are more and more people winter biking every year.
And then just a love of freedom, a love of pedaling around with my own energy. Not being dependent on having to buy gas, not having to be dependent on repairing a car all the time. It's just, it's freedom, and it's cheap, and it's healthful and fun. Saskatoon Cycles is working really hard to advocate with the city to improve the infrastructure network. So right now we're working on trying to establish like a baseline network, so you can get from point A to point B in a much safer manner than there currently is. So that's talking about like major corridors, and we'd like to see better connection points. We'd like to see those trails maintained better, or those avenues maintained better. Beyond that, there's maybe just a gentle need for a culture shift so that all forms of transportation are respected more on the road. So whether you're using a scooter, whether you're a pedestrian, whether you're a cyclist, that your right to be transporting yourself around the city is seen as valuable.
So we have a surprising number of people that bike in the winter, and then obviously in the summer, everybody loves Saskatoon in the summer, so there's mountain bike trails right within the city, lots out of town too, at Blackstrap and out by Langham. A really big road riding scene, and then more recently gravel biking as well, which is sort of out on the grid roads exploring.
Yesterday, I was biking to my workplace at a bookstore. The frost was on the trees down on the Meewasin Trail right by the Sid Buckwald Bridge, and it literally was magical. The way the sunlight was shining through the trees, there was steam coming off the river. It was just right out of a fairy tale book, and I was actually smiling as I was riding through it.
The weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac. Level Up Your Ride event is on now.
And weather specialist Tyreek Reed joins us now. Another nice one for all the bikers or walkers out there today, Ty.
Definitely a great day for the bikers, Ethan. They probably had to keep an eye out for those wind speeds, though. We saw those winds gusting to around 40 kilometers an hour in many southern parts of the province, including right here in Regina. That actually got to around 50 with those gusts today. As we head into tomorrow, that will continue, and it'll even pick up a lot more on Saturday with those winds gusting to around 50 kilometers an hour once again in central parts of the province. Now let's take a look at current temperatures right now. Up in the far north, currently sitting in the minus 20s. They started their day with those cold temperatures, and we're still seeing that right now heading into tonight. But of course, as we head further down south, still looking at seasonal and above seasonal temperatures right now in Regina. We're currently sitting at 0 degrees, a bit cooler in Saskatoon at -1. But as we head further west, we're currently seeing temperatures at 4 degrees in Maple Creek. So, you know, that warmth that we've been feeling still sticking around with us as we head into Friday and the rest of the weekend. But as we are heading into tonight, we might want to keep an eye out for some flurries in eastern parts of the province. And as we're heading into the weekend ahead, we do have a system moving in from Alberta. This will bring a lot of light snow to areas like Regina and into mostly southern and central parts of the province. Heading into Sunday as well, we'll see more of that system moving through, bringing snow into places like L'Orange and mainly central parts of the province ahead. Now, we've also been dealing with a lot of fog cover as well these past few nights. This will continue as we head into tonight as well. We'll see that fog slowly making its way in to places like Regina and mostly southern areas of the province. This will decrease visibility to about 1 kilometer in some places, even below that. As we head into tomorrow morning, we can expect to see that linger on as well, but that will clear up heading into tomorrow afternoon. Now, speaking of tomorrow afternoon, let's take a look at our 7-day forecast. Starting off Friday in Regina, above 0, looking at 5 degrees for a daytime high. This will continue as we're heading into the weekend ahead. Of course, you're still going to want to keep an eye out for those gusty winds on Saturday, but still looking quite warm on Sunday as well. We do have some cold coming in as we're starting off the week on Tuesday. Of course, you'll still want to keep an eye out for those gusty winds as well, but things will start to warm up in the week ahead. Same situation for Saskatoon. Starting off this final weekend of February with a daytime high of 3 degrees as we head into Saturday, still remaining close to that freezing mark. But of course, you'll want to keep an eye out for those gusty winds. Those will be gusting to around 45 kilometers an hour. On Saturday, as we head into the week ahead, those temperatures do drop. We will see a daytime high of around -20 on Tuesday, so you'll definitely want to bundle up as they're heading out. But for now, Ethan, things are still looking very warm for those bikers.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to do my best to ignore the -19 on the board.
Ignore it. I'm ignoring it, Ethan.
Thanks so much, Tyreek.
No problem.
Well, you've heard of doing the duck face while taking a selfie, but what about getting outfoxed? That's what happened to an animal rescue worker in England. This man's phone was snatched away by this curious critter while he was tending to another injured fox nearby. A dizzying ride through the nearby bushes ensued before the thief unceremoniously dropped the phone. The rescuer, by the way, did get his phone back. And we'll be back after the break. February is Indigenous Storytelling Month, and one man from the North says his view of the world is shaped by his first language, Dene. Now he's sharing his view through stories in his podcast. Louise Big Eagle has more.
Good afternoon, Salot ina Edlanot. Kudun Zinige Deniati podcast or
The Deneyate podcast came about accidentally during the pandemic. Willis Janvier was in the middle of a university Zoom class when he started mimicking a radio show. It gave him the idea to start his own podcast about the Dene language.
It's all about sharing the language, hearing the language. A lot of people like myself, I've lived away from home for, probably half my life now, and in urban areas. So a lot of people were displaced, whether for residential schools or foster care. They get to hear the language. That's the only focus.
Janvier is from Clearwater River, Dene Nation, near La Loche. He learned English once he entered into elementary school. The podcast honors his late father and grandmother, who were both Dene speakers. They taught him the language, but not necessarily the culture.
I didn't get to grow up with that, the drum or the songs, none of that stuff. And the people I've interviewed or met have, shared this with me. So not only is it helping a lot of other people, it helped me, kind of strengthen my identity in being Dene Sutlina.
He recently interviewed a teacher from his home community of Clearwater River Dene Nation. It has a Dene language immersion program. And Allison Lamarche spoke about the program at a linguistics conference in New York.
And when I was in New York, I actually met people who in their community, either they were the only fluent speaker or they weren't speakers, and they were, they're gathering bits and pieces of, reading material or like things that were written to revive their language. And then we have you can walk through my community and all of the little kids are speaking Dene, and you hear their parents speaking Dene to them. And so, it made me hopeful.
Anytime that I wanted to quit, I would get a message from residential school survivors saying, "Thank you for your podcast."
Janvier says he'll carry on, along with, he hopes, the Dene language. Louise Big Eagle, CBC News, Moose Jaw.
And Tyreek is back with one last look at our forecast.
Thank you, Ethan. Things will cool down here in Regina tonight, getting to a low of -6. As we head into tomorrow morning, of course, that fog will stick around with us. Still a bit cooler at -10, but things will warm up heading into the afternoon. We'll be at around 0 degrees. And of course, still the same situation for our friends in Saskatoon. They'll be around -6 tonight. As we head into tomorrow morning, things will cool down at around -10 as well, but heading into tomorrow afternoon, kicking off that weekend, they'll get to around -2 and things will warm up for a daytime high for our friends in Saskatoon as well.
All right, thank you very much, Tyreek.
No problem.
And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can always head to our website or subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel or download the CBC News app. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.